Good afternoon, everyone. We're live. Today, HR University presents HR Stories with Chiara Hughes, Director of People Operations at RevolutionParts. And she will be joining us to talk about her journey and her experience and expertise within human resources. Chiara, welcome.
Hi, well, thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yes, yes. So, Chiara, definitely wanted to invite you on the platform. You have a very interesting background, and I was hoping you could talk with us and kind of share a bit about your career journey.
Well, interesting is one word.
Okay.
I do have it. So I'll start by saying that I mean HR is a little different because you can get certifications, but I started out as a recruiter, and there's no college degree for that. So people who are recruiters have come by it through segueing through another part of a career, or much in the way that I came into it is literally one person who was a recruiter calling me and saying, "Hey, you would make a great recruiter." And when I talk to my peers or anybody in the talent acquisition industry, I can honestly say 9 times out of 10, they started their career because someone else told them they'd be good at it. So that's how I started. I Let me know if I get into too much detail or not, but
No,
I'll just give you
please.
the highlights, the chronological. I graduated from college with a political science degree and a minor in Spanish and economics. And I was going to go to law school. I took a little bit of time off to go work, and I sold insurance for Northwestern Mutual Life. And that was not an easy job, but I didn't mind it. And a friend of mine who left selling insurance went to become a technical recruiter and called me and said, "Hughes, you would make an excellent technical recruiter." And I was like, "Okay, I'll bite." Like, that's random. Like it's like saying you make an excellent dog groomer. Okay, cool. Why? Right. Um, and it was because of the sales aspect to it. Not traditional sales, but talking to people about what I think would be great for them is a natural to me. So, especially if I authentically believe it is good for them. Um, and then recruiting is like a puzzle pieces of putting things together. And then there's the humanitarian aspect of getting someone a job.
Sure.
So that was basically, sorry, I just want to turn off my notifications. I'm so sorry. I thought I had done that.
No, no
Okay,
worries.
so that's what happened. So he asked me to go do that. I went to join one of the big name brand recruiting firms. I moved to Arizona, went to join a big name brand recruiting firm. Had an okay experience there. It was time for them to move me over into their technical division. They kind of backed out of their promise to do so, so I quit and went to work for a firm where my first literal technical recruiting job was calling and placing visa candidates off a bench, which is the hardest job I've ever done in technical recruiting since the day I started. So, sorry, of course, my dogs are going to get involved. They've been
He's
quiet for an hour.
excited. He wants to know about. Yeah, he wants to know
Yeah,
what
they're
your
fun.
history.
They're really interested in the story. But anyway, so that was it. And then it just snowballed from there. And then I was an agency recruiter. And then I worked for a Microsoft partner for a while. Then I went
Nice.
to work as a corporate recruiter, a recruiting manager for a company that was in America, London, and Singapore. Then I left there and went to a boutique recruiting agency. From there, I was recruited to go to Carvana. Then I retired from Carvana, took some time off, became a consultant, and one of my consulting clients was Revolution Parts, and they offered me a job. So
Okay.
that's the way it went.
And then, fair enough. And I want to get into that later on about
Sure.
the agency side versus working in-house TA,
Sure.
because I think that's a nuance for folks not in HR or trying to get into HR. Some of
It
the
is.
pros and cons about that, but I promise we'll get to that later.
Sure.
You talk a little bit about the humanitarian aspect of being helpful, right? Offering
Yeah.
someone, a job,
Yep.
and so just talk about kind of initially, what made you, I guess, continue or lean into a career in TA, right? Because you talked about, someone who identified you earlier in your career that you could be a technical recruiter and you'd be great at it. But then you kind of stuck it out, and not only stuck it out, you thrived in it and you've grown. But like, What about you made you think, oh, you know what? This is something I can do, and I like it.
Well, so I was fortunate enough maybe to be, okay, I am usually very convinced that I am leveled up by the company I keep. And I very rarely think I'm the smartest person in the room.
Ah, okay.
So since I don't assume I'm the smartest person in the room, I recognized early on I'm not awesome at multitasking in my career. So instead of being tangentially or minutely okay at several things, I decided to try to be very good at one thing.
Okay.
And I would say that to anybody: focus on focus, ruthlessly prioritize. You cannot do everything awesome. No human can. Pick what you're going to be good at. And if you're very intentional about what you're good at and only do things for your career that will keep you known as a subject matter expert in that career, that's how you get known for that. And that's how you get job opportunities presented to you. So I was very linear. I did not deviate. I mean, I did corporate recruiting. I did agency recruiting. Like you said, I even owned my own recruiting firm. Never once deviated from technical recruiting, not one time.
Got it.
Now, when I got to 2 jobs, the corporate, I had to do both because I was a leader. But so that was it. So I realized I was good at it. I liked doing it. I genuinely love humans. I love their story. I just love everybody's story. I really want to help. And and when you authentically do that, in that type of role, the crass, immediate way that you measure success is commissions,
Sure, sure.
right? And then the second way is getting either promoted at your current role, accolades from your current role, or someone recruiting you out because you developed a great reputation. So I saw that I was doing well in terms of the commissions, and I was doing well in terms of I never had to interview for a job. And so that like was my own personal positive reinforcement that I was doing the right thing.
Noted. Okay, so want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that.
Sure.
So in the TA world, and want to just for our audience so they could understand the scope of TA, right? So there is the sourcing aspect, the strategy. Then there is the candidate experience. Then there's the filling a rec, kind of. And you talked about the commission piece, and we're gonna get to boutique versus in-house TA. What particularly about TA? Because you talked about being a specialist and specializing. And in those areas, what do you like about the TA?
I like the puzzle piece. I like not just saying, whether it's your client or your internal client, your internal hiring manager, stakeholder, saying, I want to hire a person to do this for our company. Truly understanding what they actually need, not just what they think they need. So what they actually need, coming up with a strategy and a plan in the back office administrative way internally to get that, and then having a clearly defined, measurable sourcing strategy to get the candidates, and then having a beautiful candidate experience through the pipeline, through to offer and close, right? With radical transparency on the part of the recruiter to the candidate, and radical transparency with setting expectations from the recruiter to the hiring manager.
Wow, Chiara. I mean, Chiara, the gems you're putting out there are just amazing. Which I got to ask another follow-up question.
Yeah, go. I'm here for you, Anthony.
For us and the community. And thank you.
Correct.
So how do you kind of take that next level, right? If an internal client says, hey, we need X, but then the more you kind of go through the search, that you figure out they maybe need X and Y, or X or a Y instead of X. Talk about that.
Data. So as you're talking to candidates and you're kind of keeping track, whether on your own notes or in your ATS spreadsheet, you pick and you say, okay, you said you need these types of candidates. Here's 4 candidates that I think are the best of the ones I've talked to for this. And then they interview. And at the end of those interviews, the hiring manager or the interviewers say, You really missed the mark, Kiana.
Mhm.
So then I say, wait, where? I thought I was giving you what you thought. Where did these candidates miss the mark? And if they say, oh, they needed this experience, or they needed this vibe, or they needed this career trajectory, then I say, then we need to change the job description because that's not what you said.
I
Right.
see that.
But and if I'm going to, or if let's say they said they want to pay the new hire 70K, 70,000.
Sure.
And everybody I talk to who is a fit for the role needs 90K. I say to my hiring manager, hey, I put together a little spreadsheet. Here's my 3 favorite candidates for the role that fit what you say you need. And all of them need 90K. We need to do one of 2 things. Increase the salary range for this role or decrease the number of requirements for the role. What can you give on?
Sure.
So it's like data to back up with your request and then a willingness to you give and take.
Okay. And definitely is helpful. And kind of for our community that are earlier in their career, wanted to kind of ask that follow-up question because there's a lot of nuance. And it seems with your hiring managers, you have a relationship built into, kind of have, those conversations. So that's, definitely helpful. Want to go back to what we talked about a few minutes ago. Can you tell us a little bit about experiences and kind of navigating working in a boutique agency or staffing firm, kind of the lay of the land in that arena versus being an in-house recruiter or a talent acquisition leader in-house for a company? Kind of how you straddle both of those areas.
Sure. So I want to further make a distinction that a new career recruiter would, depending on their personality and drive, could flourish in a boutique firm if someone's there to train them. Otherwise, if you're a brand new recruiter learning the ropes, I highly suggest going to a bigger agency because they teach the basics like automatically. Like they just instill those fundamentals like, 100 dials equals 60 connects equals 15 interviews equals 5 final interviews is 3 offers to 1 accept. Like, so get your fundamentals. So let me just start by saying, if you're an early career recruiter going to a big company, a bigger, more famous staffing agency might be the way to go to get your fundamentals. It's cutthroat, but you learn, you cut your teeth. Okay. So back to the question. When you work at a boutique firm, again, that firm has to be, if a boutique firm says we're good at everything, don't go work at that boutique firm.
Okay.
They're not good at everything. You can't be good at anything. Otherwise you're huge and you're no longer a boutique firm, right? Sure. So they're usually very good at accounting and finance, for example, very good at tech recruiting, for example. Those are the 2 biggest, 2 most common, I would say. Pick your poison and go work there. So that way all the candidates and clients that you're talking to are in that realm. So you are concentrating your effort and your skill, your knowledge base on that realm. So, and then hustle. So again, if it's an agency recruiting job, you are paid usually a pretty good, like okay base salary, sometimes a draw, but your money is frankly made on a commission, which is a cut of the fee or a percentage of the gross profit made by the hourly revenue generated by the candidate. The difference between what we pay the candidate, the bill rate, and then any burden in there. So the gross profit, recruiters are paid on a percentage of gross profit, a dollar amount of gross profit, or a percentage of a permanent placement, right? So you have to hustle to make that money to make those placements. And what I recommend you doing is saying, this is the amount of money I want to make in commissions. Here are the number of deals I have to close per month to get to that dollar amount, reasonably or average in gross profit or commissions. And if I know it takes me 14 interviews to land at 1 hire, and I need 5 hires, 5 times 14, right, is 70. I need to do 70 interviews. Like that. So and then be disciplined.
Sure.
Right. So, and the other thing I did when I was only a recruiter and not in the account manager sales aspect, I would ask my salespeople, my account managers, if I could go with them to the client meetings. because I wanted
do tell more about that.
yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to hear first of all, salespeople are more salespeople. They're not as technical. They're not as expert. They're not going to be doing the sourcing or looking. So
Sure.
I wanted to go with my own ears, hear from the hiring manager, the client, what they actually needed. Plus, it just makes the recruiting firm you work for more credibility because they care enough to bring the recruiter and to really care about what the actual needs are. Now, I don't want to make a blanket statement. There are some salespeople who are really great at it, and they're, especially if they've been like tech sales forever, like technical recruiting, account management forever. But why not bring the recruiter? You're just eliminating a middleman instead of them coming back saying, and plus the recruiter has kind of an idea of who their candidates are. And maybe you could even present a candidate while you're sitting there. So I really liked to be involved as much as possible. In every role where I was just a recruiter, I think my first 2 roles, I was only a recruiter, but pretty much after that, I morphed into sales and started saying, well, if I come along and I help you close that deal, or if one of my candidates gives me a lead, which enables this company to close more business, I want to cut because I'm doing the work.
Got it. Chiara, the amount of information you're just saying, I'm revelating it because there's so much goodness you're just saying.
It's a lot.
Talk about sales boutique agency recruiter, the entrepreneurial aspect. I think that's a big piece, and I think we're calling it out indirectly. But can you talk about that more from a direct form, just for our audience?
Oh, well, direct is my strong suit, so sure. So yeah. So here's the deal. This is what I tell people, even when people ask me for career advice now. Mm-hmm. You either want, still some corporate environments for corporate recruiting can be stressful, especially if you're in a high growth company or a very niche thing that the company does that makes recruiting difficult because everything's a purple squirrel in recruiting, something hard to find, unicorn, right? Everything's a purple squirrel. So that there's a stress to that, but it's not as stressful as being an agency recruiter where you have to sell the job to the candidate, sell your candidate to your account manager, hiring manager, and then that person has to sell the candidate to the client. So selling has to go on. And since your money's based on commission and sometimes out of your control, what the account manager says to the client, you've got to be so good that your account rep trusts you so much that they're going to submit your candidates first to get a better chance of closing. So that's the direct part. The other direct, and you have more control. So like, here's the thing. If you're a corporate recruiter, you usually just make a base salary.
Right.
And it's a better base salary than, let's say, the pure base salary of an agency recruiter. Right. But you make a base salary and maybe a bonus. You don't really get commissions as a corporate recruiter. You might get a 10, 15% annual bonus based on performance. But if you make 100K and you get a 15%, you're maxed out at 115K for the year. Right. If you're making 65K as a base as an agency recruiter and you make 20% of every fee that your client, that your company places. So like, let's say they place an accountant for 100K at a 20% fee. The agency brings in $20,000 and you get 20% of that. So you get $4,000.
Right.
If I'm making 65K and $4,000 each time or average of $4,000, right? I need what, 5 of those placements, 10 to make more than I would as a corporate recruiter. And that's only at one revenue stream.
Sure.
Yeah, but if you can get a bigger client that's hiring 5 software developers at 140K, right? So now that's a $70,000? No, $28,000 fee, and it's a $28,000 fee, and I'm getting 20%, right? Now I'm at a 6K fee. I place 4 of those. That's a $24,000. I've blown out what I can make as a corporate recruiter.
Right. And so, and thank you for kind of showing kind of the entrepreneurial, the sales, and kind of the earning potential on the agency side. Me personally, I've been more on the corporate side, so I totally understand where you're getting at. And you're right. I know, colleagues on the agency side. Talk about kind of, because you've done both. So on the in-house side, kind of how do you or your team kind of navigate that, right? Because relationships are different working in-house than external. So just kind of, I'm not for or against either. I just want to
Yeah.
give a balanced argument for both sides.
Sure. So what a recruiter in-house has to remember is that their hiring manager is their client. Recruiting in-house is even more of a service org, and your client is your hiring manager. So, and here's where the pressure though comes from corporate. If you're in an agency and you place someone and it doesn't work out at another company. If you place someone internally as a corporate recruiter or an in-house recruiter and it doesn't work out, the ripple effect touches your company and your reputation in your company.
Sure. Yeah.
Also, you hire these people and eventually in ideal world, they get promoted and they become leaders and they become your client. So you've got to be very thoughtful about how you hire people and how you interact with them, with internal hires and internal stakeholders. So you've got to get to really know the business. Like, you have to know the business. And to get your hiring managers trust, they need to trust that you know what you're doing. Like, just like they're the subject matter expert on running a software team, you're the subject matter expert on hiring. Right. And I always like to say, be proactive. So I ask my recruiting team to send out every Friday a recap for every hiring manager. These are your roles that are open under you. These are the number of candidates in this stage. These are the number of candidates we would consider for an offer. My favorite candidate is this. I think they have an 80% chance of accepting. This role has been open for 35 days, and our candidates have been in the funnel for 21 days. Like, because we want a shorter time. We want a reasonable time to fill. Sure. We want a reasonable time for the candidates to spend in the process. Right? Because the other beautiful thing is, if you notice how many days a candidate's in the process, if they're normally only in that stage, like the panel interview stage, for a week, and this candidate was in for 2 weeks, that's okay once or twice. But if all of a sudden you find out that for this rec, candidates are consistently in that one stage for 3 weeks, that means that interviewing team is not ready to interview and everybody's too busy, which means changes have to be made. Either we push that recruiting process out and stop until they're ready, or we make people block time on their calendars to do interviewing. So it's managing expectations and setting the data and using that to explain the story of how we're hiring, and then using that to manage expectations on when we can get a hire. Because let's not forget that we have, like, our leadership breathing down our necks in corporate to make sure that these roles are filled, because every role that's not filled is a ripple effect to the rest of the teams, right?
Oh, absolutely. No, it's definitely a hidden cost when right, in terms of, when there's vacancies. Okay, I think we're setting it up nicely. Okay. Let's talk about your current role, your scope. So, as I mentioned, early in the webinar, you're director of people operations. So how did you grow from breadth and depth, not just to manage TA, but other areas of HR? So talk a little bit about that.
So a lot of it was, so we have some questions popping up on the right. I don't know if you're seeing them, but we can get to them later.
Sure.
So circumstantially, to be frank, and it was always like someone called me and asked me, and I say yes. Like, there's people, I feel like there are people in the world, like, when you say, hey, let's go do something, they'll give you the 5 reasons why something will work and we can do it. And the other type of human is telling you the 5 reasons why something might fail. I am the former. I'm like, yes, let's try it, right? So when I was at the Microsoft partner, I started as just a recruiter, but then I started doing some sales and pulling in some deals, right? Someone who was trying to work with me as a vendor and get on my vendor list, she had a friend who worked at the first corporate recruiting job I had. Okay. And they were looking for someone to be their corporate recruiting manager for the 3 continents. Okay. And they were asking their network, and this person said, hey, there's Chiara Hughes at X. She's never done corporate recruiting before, but you need to hustle and you need someone firm and you need someone to blah, 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 blah. And he called me and I said, yeah, I guess. And I wasn't really interested, but I ended up being talked into it and I took the role, right? Because for me, I had now done agency recruiting. I had owned my own company, and I had done like consulting recruiting for a consulting company where you're hiring people to the bench, right? There was not much else I could do other than go corporate and then corporate recruiting leadership, right? Or boutique. I'd not worked at a boutique firm. So they hired me to be the corporate recruiting manager. And that's where I all of a sudden was hiring for lawyers. Wow. And I just had to be like very disciplined in how I know you need to recruit. I just had to learn what a lawyer looked like, a good lawyer looked like to this company, become acquainted with it, work my network to get leads, have honest, open conversations, and start to build a pipeline for legal candidates, start to build a pipeline for product candidates, start to build a pipeline for sales candidates. And that was it. I mean, so that's how I made the jump to corporate. Somebody knew me and thought I could do it. And I said, heck, I'll try it. So that's how I made that leap that time. I left that company. I was a victim of a riff, as were 40% of us. And again, Head Farmer, the boutique recruiting agency I worked for, was trying to get on my vendor list when I was at the other company. I was set to meet with Head Farmer that day the same day I got laid off. And I called the person, the co-owner at Head Farmer, and I said, I'm sorry, you probably don't want to talk to me anymore because I'm not going to help you get in at this company because I just got laid off. And he said, nope, still want to meet. So we went to Lolo's for chicken and waffles.
Okay.
And we had a conversation. And he said, there's another reason why I wanted to meet you. I said, what was it? And he said, my partner and I are looking for someone to kick off our technical recruiting division, our managing director of technology recruiting. We've talked to people about you. We think you'd be a great fit. Will you consider it? I interviewed on site that day, took some time off, and started working for them a month later.
Wow.
So they gave me the opportunity to start a team from scratch, which I had at my previous company.
Yeah.
But I had never done it before. I did it at the previous company. I did it at Head Farmer, and then I did it again at Carvana, where I left before I joined RevolutionParts. So someone keeps calling me and saying, we think you'd be a good fit. Do you want to try it? And my response is always, heck yeah. So that's how. So I just jumped. I just did the next thing. And so it was either like I had to broaden my horizons to do other than tech when you're a corporate recruiting manager, especially, again, in 3 continents. And then I had to, of course, you went to Lulu's. And then you have to spread it out. And then, so there's 2 ways to do it. You either get promoted up through the ranks of people operations, which is what I'm doing now, or you just stay a hands-on, day-to-day corporate or like technical or corporate recruiter, or a recruit, like a principal recruiter, and make that money and just be super awesome at doing that.
Right.
Continue to work your network. But once again, people kept asking me how I did things, and they wanted to learn from maybe my particular style. Yep. So I kind of got pulled into leadership versus asking to be in it.
Got it. Yeah. So I definitely want to acknowledge kind of the folks in the chat. Chiara, thank you for kind of sharing that. And I think, indirectly, she may have answered some questions. And Casey and I will kind of give my own take. And, Chiara, you can certainly respond to, do you have an ideal hiring process? I think what Chiara had said is networking is powerful. It's word of mouth, right? Like this company that Chiara is in is part of networking. Now, how it happened, where it happened in Lolo's or it happened somewhere else, it's not, its reputation is very important. But yes. So no matter, definitely technology is a big aspect, in the TA world, but certainly, having the power of network and reputation. And then Casey, you had referenced the following stated, some people say hiring needs to be done in a month. Other places take months and multiple stages. I'll quickly say on that, it depends on company culture.
Thumbs down.
That. But Chiara, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Sorry, not to interrupt. I don't want, unless you're interviewing for a VP role, it should not take months and jillions of stages. It just shouldn't. It just shouldn't. So Casey, your questions kind of tie together. An ideal hiring process for me personally, especially whether it's at recruiting agency or in-house, is the following. The person who's hiring for the role has a very clear definition of what they want. That's A. You can't have surprises later. It makes a terrible candidate experience and a terrible experience for the recruiter. So A, hiring manager understands exactly what they want. B, recruiter understands what hiring manager wants. C, recruiter goes out and sources and uses their networks first. You can always get people applying online, but sourcing and using your network is always the best way. Also, employee referrals, let's not forget that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then a very tight internal recruiting process that is no more than 3 or 4 steps with no more than 2, maximum 3 people inside, because too many cooks in the kitchen gets a little crazy pants and makes for a long interview process. Then after the final interview, a debrief calibration call on the candidate, where maybe everybody who interviewed is in the meeting for the first 90%. Then if we're going to make an offer, they all drop off and the last 10 minutes is spent. Recruiter and hiring manager coming up with an offer, right? Then you get the offer approved, pre-close call with the candidate to make sure that you're still in line with what they said they wanted at the beginning, offer close. Also, on any team I've ever led, if you're going to if your candidate's not getting an offer, you will call them personally and tell them that we are not moving forward. If you talk to a human, you get a call from a human.
Okay.
That's my ideal.
And so thank you, Chiara, for answering that in depth. And I think, Casey, you're hearing from a TA leader, HR leader, kind of how to preserve the candidate experience throughout the process, right?
Yep.
Even if it's a rejection, it could be a no for now. It doesn't mean no forever,
Yep.
right? So just wanted to, make sure we close the loop on that. Chiara, I just want to be mindful of time. Do you have a hard stop, or you can go a little longer?
I can go a little longer. Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I do want to also call out is proactive and clear communication to candidates the whole way through. Sure. Even if you said you'd have an answer about an offer to them by Friday, and it's Friday morning and you don't, please call the candidate and say, this came up this week, and be honest. Hey, one of the decision makers is sick.
Yeah.
Sorry, we will talk to you on Monday. Do what you say you're going to do as transparently as possible.
That's that, and certainly well noted and taken. Absolutely. Yeah. Talk a little bit about the value of employer branding. All right. So, candidates could apply for many roles, but kind of what's your philosophy on that?
Authenticity.
Okay.
So if you can present how you want to be presented to the outside world as an employer, but if internally it's not authentically that way, don't do it. Because you don't want to lure people in false pretenses, right? So that's authenticity, and reality is the way. Also, be mindful of who you're trying to hire. So your target personas, right? And build your employer branding to those target personas. If you know that you're an engineering company and you hire, let's say you only hire 100 people a year, but 80 of them are engineers, make sure your employer branding is targeted toward appealing to engineers. And then you can do a subset of what type of engineer. And then also please bear in mind cognitive diversity and hiring for underrepresented groups as well. I have to say that, especially in tech. So employer branding is very important. Just A, make it real and authentic, and B, make sure it targets your actual candidate base.
Okay. You perfectly segue to my next question. What is kind of your general strategy and philosophy towards recruiting underrepresented communities and DEI, or diversity, equity, inclusion? What's kind of your thoughts and strategies around that?
So if anybody is listening to this who knows me at all, the next words I'm about to say are very, very accurate and true to who I am and consistent with my personality. I'm so glad you asked.
Okay. That's why I wanted to make sure we had a little bit of time to talk about it, because I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about it.
I am one of the people that has been in talent acquisition for October 1st, 2024 will be 25 years for me. Wow. So If you can imagine what it was like for women to work in the tech industry, now it's already not even 25 years ago. Forget it. I would get ignored. Like I can't even get into it. So I don't want to get on that whole nother tangent and soapbox, though it's one of my favorites. The point is, women, African-American, Latin, LGBTQ, handy capable, you name it, they're not represented in tech. Nowhere near equally, right? Asians a little more so now, but not as equal as basically white males. So
Okay.
I've tried to do little pieces of this everywhere I've worked, even if it was on a tiny, or I've joined an ERG, employee resource group, or started one of the committees, or was a founding member of an ERG. But where I currently work is that I am actually in a spot where I can control it and I set the tone for how we do it and I love it and I'm willing to take it on. And so there are I literally outlined 8 steps. And the very first step, and you're dead in the water if this first step, and like we talked about prior to starting the call.
Sure.
This is sub-zero, right? This is step 1 below step 1, step 0 for step 1. You have to have your C-suite or your leadership authentically understand and support the initiatives for diversity hiring. If they don't, this is moot.
Okay.
You'll never get farther, right? So first of all, make sure you go to work for a company that supports these initiatives. And frankly, if they don't, leave that company. You should get out. That's it, right? And I know that sounds very binary and very opinionated, but I don't care. I feel that way. Go work for good people. There you go. Second, hire a diverse recruiting team. Make sure that the humans who talk to other humans have a diversity of thought and action that they can bring to coloring and influencing the hiring process. Right? Next, make sure your career site and your branding is on brand and important for attracting diverse candidates. Next, make sure your job descriptions include inclusive language, are not geared toward certain types of people, and are not geared toward trying to hire a bunch of people who are just like us. Mm-hmm. We want culture add, not culture fit. Okay.
I like that culture add. Okay.
Diverse candidate slate. When you're presenting candidates to your hiring managers, don't present all white males. Just don't. Right? Hiring managers hire from the pool that a recruiter gives them.
Sure.
Okay. Now, please, when I say this, it doesn't happen as often anymore. But a few years ago, when I used to talk about this, it was really insulting when people would say, "Oh, so just hire someone for the sake of hiring them and not the most qualified person." No. I'm assuming recruiters want to keep their jobs and establish and keep their credibility. So of course, we're only going to present those people who absolutely can do the job. That's to me a foregone conclusion. So yes, it's a candidate who fits the job description, can do the job, obviously. And then on top of that is maybe 50% is white males, 25% of female, 25% from underrepresented ethnic group. So diverse candidate slate. Next, diverse interviewing team. And I don't mean what they look like, and I don't mean gender diverse. That's not what I mean. Sometimes it kind of ends up being a byproduct, but a diverse interview team means that people are interviewing candidates who are not all groupthink from the same team they're interviewing from. For example, if you're interviewing a software engineer, you don't want a bunch of software engineers only being in the interview process. Right. You want maybe someone from outside, maybe a product manager who doesn't look like, think like, act like, or talk like the engineers. Because we don't want to hire a bunch of people who are exactly the same. We need diversity and creativity in the solutions that we're presenting as a company. So diverse interview slate, and then interview team, and then outreach. Outreach is boost and reinforce your benefits program that has to do with underrepresented groups. Sure. Do your networking, source candidates from job websites that are targeted to underrepresented groups, start a women's panel, go speak at schools to let women know that you can get jobs in tech that are not software developer. And then finally, and this is a huge one, employee training. Take the lovely, strong, smart, capable people you've hired and provide training and internal mobility options for them to do something else.
That is powerful and profound. I just want to call out some of Casey's comments. Definitely echo you, Casey, with culture add. So shout out to you. And I will, I would say, when you're working in a company, these are some of the things, right? And this is why, Chiara and I, we talk about employer branding, right? Because of the employer branding, it may be silent or maybe silent or complicit. You can kind of get a feeling whether this is a company you want to apply for or not, right?
Yep.
And so, but recruiters have so much influence on a candidate experience. I mean, I've worked in a place for 7-8 years, and I remember the person that gave me the offer, and that is one of the joys of being in TA. And I'm sure Chiara, her team have that, or doing the outreach, whether it's HBCUs or certain certain communities or job vocational programs. And so definitely DEI is something that's important, and it's something that intersects with talent acquisition. So I think it would have been irresponsible, Chiara, if we did not talk about it.
Agreed.
So that's why I asked you, because it's something that, especially in tech. Definitely. Just want to ask just a couple of questions in closing, 2 or 3 more questions. Just kind of talk about, an HR initiative. It doesn't have to be TA specific, but it could be, that you felt was impactful, that you was a part of, an impactful HR initiative, and why you felt it was impactful.
Well, so the DEI training and program launch that I started at RevolutionParts February 8th was one of them. And the reason why, and it's not just, I helped to launch a DEI program with very specific goals on increasing our employee percentages, right?
Sure.
But it was the fact that when I asked for people, whether I asked or didn't, people came to give me feedback on that presentation. And what's not surprised me, but what I was so gratified to see was that it wasn't even the content and everything I just outlined with 8 steps. It was the fact that we were willing to get uncomfortable and have the conversation. To own what we don't do well and own what we could be better. And having even some of the men in the audience literally spoke up, and they were, because I made it somewhat interactive, and was like, who here feels like they inadvertently, unconsciously interview women different than they interview men? And almost 80% of the dudes in the room put their arm up, right? So it was just about the actual beautiful thing was owning it. So that is why I'm proud of it. We owned it. Some other things I've been a part of that I'm proud of are things like instituting bonding leave for paternity leave, or parental leave.
Sure.
Instead of just maternity leave for the human who gave birth to the baby, bonding leave for anybody in the company who wants to bond with a child, whether it was through adoption, surrogacy, birth, etc. So bonding leave that's separate from parental leave. I'm very, very proud of that one.
Okay.
And just ERGs in general. Anytime I've been a part of an ERG, like Pride at Carvana, for example, Empower, which is a women's group when at my last company. Those are two HR. The first 2 are HR things I've been a part of that I'm very proud of. And then the rest were bigger things.
Got it. Wow, that's done. Let's talk about work-life balance and caring about employees. Talk about, the bonding leave piece. My last question is just, kind of share with the audience, what do you think are essential skills to thrive as a TA professional or even an HR professional?
Well, HR has to be a little more discreet than TA, right? You always think that I used to say this maybe more so before my current role. And I used to joke to give a line just for the sake of accountabilities, right? Recruiting's job is to get a butt in a seat. After this butt is in the seat, it's HR's job.
Yeah.
just to make it oversimple. That's a high oversimplification. But I did that on purpose so that we knew who was accountable for what.
Right.
Because everybody has to be accountable, so you're not thinking somebody else did it when you did. You were supposed to do it. So there's that. Kindness and empathy. Follow through, discipline. So kindness and empathy, you are talking, other than buying a house or a car, financially, a job change is a hugely impactful thing on a person and their loved ones.
Absolutely, yeah.
So please be empathetic to that when you're talking to them, right? I've gone so far. If you've been personally recruited by me, you've maybe heard me say, yeah, this isn't the right job for you. Don't do it. As much as I'd love to close the deal and have you come work with me at my company, don't do it. You're going to travel a ton. Your partner's not going to see you. Just don't do it. I'm telling you, don't do it. Like I'm very transparent. So empathy, transparency, discipline, and follow through. If I say, Anthony, listen, I don't know if you're going to get the job or not, but I'll let you know by Friday afternoon. Hey, Anthony, I know it's Friday afternoon. I don't have an answer, but I promised you I'd touch base with you. Like, do what you say you're going to do. And I literally have still to this day, every 6 months, ruthlessly disciplined on who I'm going to follow up with.
Got it. And so, kind of your insights, just basically sharing. It's basically soft skills, right? I mean, you talked about the very early beginning of our conversation. You went to college, but kind of kindness, empathy. I mean, you don't go to school for that.
No.
Right? You don't go to school, for be, transparent. It's not, well, what's this law or whatnot. So I think it's very interesting. But and talk about like job change in someone's life. I mean, that that is huge. So just want to just kind of wrap up by answering some questions in the chat. This will be available as a recording immediately on HR University's both LinkedIn page a minute after we go off the air, Casey, as well as on YouTube. So you can certainly look back at kind of what I've asked Chiara, as well as how and whatnot. But this was amazing, Chiara. I really had amazing time talking with you this afternoon.
Oh, no, it was a pleasure. I'm so sorry. Of course, my dogs are involved, but Casey did bring up something about soft skills. I am a ruthless calendar user. Like not only is my calendar used and I know what I need to do, I use calendar blocking to set off the times of chunks of times I'm going to do things. And then I even have it. Sorry.
It's okay. He's excited. I can go ahead and answer this piece, as well from Chiara for Casey and Catherine as well. Definitely, calendar management is helpful. Using a CRM. I would say Catherine and Chiara could certainly comment. When she has a moment. Chiara, do you think candidates look at a recruiter's personal brand on LinkedIn before considering speaking with them? Is it important for the recruiter to make their own content? I would say this. I would say generally, presentation is a big part of your profile, a big part of your brand, right? So definitely, especially now, LinkedIn is a data repository for many candidates out there. So yes, right? So in terms of your profile picture, in terms of things that you're posting, it kind of gives a sense of, well, is this person committed to the, kind of their profession? Are they a subject matter expert? So absolutely. And by the way, and, Chiara can certainly talk about it, not just recruiters, hiring managers, which you ultimately be working for, they will, talk about it. But that's just, from my lens as just a general HR professional. I don't know, Chiara, if you have any just quick thoughts on that piece.
I agree with everything you said. And Catherine, I do think that candidates that are they're looking for senior level roles would look more at a recruiter's background and where they are and what their seat is at the table even if it's just in their self-interest to see what that recruiter's influence is on them getting hired, right? I would say more for like if it's more of a transactional job or an more of a operational job, and this is again a gross generalization, maybe not as often because they're not. It's almost like they haven't developed the maturity in their career enough to know how it's all related. So I would say, and then is it important for a recruiter to make their own content? If you would have asked me that question 5 years ago, I would have said no. But now with TikTok being a recruiting tool, yes.
It's a game changer.
It is. And people, the other thing I want to piggyback off of what you said earlier, Anthony, is people respond to people's personalities and like authentic personality. You know, within 5 minutes of sitting across from someone, you have a bell system in your belly that's telling you, yes, I feel comfortable with this person, or ick, I'm just another number to this person. They're not listening to me. They're talking down to me. They weren't prepared for this interview. They're not like they think they're better than me. If you feel that at all, moving on, bye, right? So like, bye, Felicia. But like seriously, you can feel, and your gut, your bell in your stomach, please listen to it and work with those people who make you feel good and make you feel heard and make you feel important and make you feel seen and heard. So yeah.
Wow. And so again, that's kind of, food for thought, for the audience here. And kind of what Chiara you talked about. I knew kind of the first couple of minutes we were talking, I knew there was going to be a great conversation, high energy from you. The community, the time just flew.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. I love spreading the word about talent acquisition as a legitimate industry, the art of it, how hard it is. And as we said before we joined, if you don't have a recruiting team, especially if you're a larger company, it literally builds your company. Recruiting and HR literally builds and manages the lifeblood of your company. So it's super important.
Well, Chiara, you definitely made the case kind of for our community here. If they are not in TA, either to jump into TA or grow within TA to kind of make the impact that you're making. So with that being said, Chiara, you have a great evening and take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.